We should start with the title slide. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Rajeev Pandey, and the official title for this talk is Developing Cloud-Native Apps Using Helion Development Platform. They didn't go with my alternate title, which was Rajeev's Random Rambling, but we'll see how it goes. So as the kind introduction said, I was born in India, but I was raised in Montana in the US, so that explains both my name and my accent, I hope. And I've been with HP for over 20 years now, doing all sorts of things, IT labs, R&D, printing web services, video conferencing, digital entertainment. And for the last 3 years or so, been in HP Cloud. Before that, I spent 3 summers at Intel, and before that, a company that doesn't exist anymore, but Sun Microsystems. So we are living through a bunch of shifts, and I've lived through a few more than most of you out there, I can tell already. But we've lived through the mainframe and the client server and the internet shifts, and now there's a big one underway, and that's the cloud, social, big data, and mobile. And this shift is making profound changes for us, and that's what I want to talk about today, is how are we accounting for this shift in the structure of what we build. So the last speaker, fantastic talk, was more of sort of boots on the ground code. This is going to be how you structure services and deploy and operate DevOps and cloud-based services. So one of my favorite applications, I'm a bibliophile, I read a lot, I still read to my kids, is called Library Thing. And it's a way you can keep track of the books in your collection. You can have reviews of them. You can have author clouds and topic clouds. And if you have a large collection like I do, you even have an automated means of inserting data into your system using an old thing that probably before you guys were born, QCats. They're sort of barcode readers. And so you can quickly enter data, and it's a great connection between the physical world and the digital world. And so this is one of my favorite services, and then it's in the cloud, of course, and it even has a social component where they will connect you with other people of whatever preferred sex who have a similar library. And I'm married, so I haven't tried that feature, so I can't tell you about it. But it's one of my favorite apps. 2 months ago, I was at Developer Week in San Francisco, and they held a hackathon. We're holding a hackathon here, too. There are some spaces still available. First prize to the US, tickets to the US. Second prize, I think, is tickets to Goa, so it sounds like pretty good prizes to me. But you can sign up at the booth if you'd like. And at this particular hackathon, the team that won, it was a small pizza team. Pizza team, you can feed the whole team with one pizza. And so the team came together, and in a day and a half, they built a service called FPEG. What is FPEG? It's the observation that LinkedIn photos or Facebook photos, mostly you care about the face in the photo, and the background's somewhat interesting, but not really. But humans are really good at facial recognition and and so if there's any decompression or compression artifacts in the face, you pick up on it immediately. And so what they did is they used a face recognition algorithm to identify the coordinates of the face or faces in the picture, and then they did very aggressive compression on the rest of the photo and very light compression on the face. And they built it in a day and a half. So this is, the new world, is you get an idea, you deploy quickly. And another team used something called sentiment analysis, connecting Twitter feeds and Facebook feeds and being able to tell you if your friend is up or down in mood and should you send them a pick-me-up or what. So I'm talking about apps, right? And that is the point. The value is in the apps. You have to build apps that are of great value to those that you serve, whether it's within an enterprise or out in the open market. And so we need ways in this new world, in that shift, to build apps that work in cloud, in social, in mobile. So how do we do that? How do we do that fast? Well, there's a problem. The problem is we spend most of our time doing everything but building the apps, right? We spend time provisioning where we're going to deploy these things. We spend time with the operating system. We tend to spend time with the frameworks. We spend time with, again, doing everything but writing the code or the unit tests. that you need to in order to deploy that app and operate that app and make some money off that app or keep your job with the app. So how do we deal with this? How do we make that 20% more and that 80% less? So the idea is, first, there are so many technologies that if you're ever hands-on keyboard, you should always think, okay, someone somewhere has solved this problem before, right? So recognizing what has been solved before and what you can solve, and finding all that infrastructure, whether it's databases like MySQL or editors or deployment tools like Jenkins or languages or orchestration tools, it's all there. It's all there. You just have to put it together in a tasteful and meaningful way. And so one of the things you hope for is great success with your app. You'd like great success all the time. But sometimes you have apps that are seasonal, this is Walmart.com, so right around Christmas every year, things go crazy. This is American tax prep software. Every year at April 15th, everyone loses interest. And so, how do you deal with that? Of course, the answer there is you have to deal with the elasticness. And so either if you're doing your own physical provisioning, you're either always over capacity or under capacity. And so this isn't good either way. In one case, you're losing customers. In the other case, you're losing money. So what do? You have to go with a cloud-based environment. So at least you virtualize, and you can reuse those assets, that hardware, and in different services. Hopefully you queue up a bunch of seasonal services at different seasons. Or you have that steady state, or once your app gets slash-dotted, it goes viral, it gets suddenly very popular, you can cope with that surge in demand. And that's what OpenStack is all about. That was one of the logos on that open source slide. So OpenStack just started out 4 years ago, and its value was immediately evident, and it has just taken off. And so it's a technology that I think is safe to say is a sure thing. It's a sure bet. And so it's gone from, in 2010, basically NASA and Rackspace standing up and saying, here world, here's this thing, to now there's hundreds of companies, hundreds of products, thousands of committers. And it's just amazing and worth looking into. And it solves that problem. HP got involved with this. I won't dwell on it in great detail, but we bet the farm on OpenStack, and we've embraced it, and that is the basis of what has become HP Helion. HP Helion is the product family around cloud, and if you're a chemistry major, I was really bad at chemistry, I had to look this up later, but it's a helium ion where one of the ions is removed or something, and so it's Helion for that ionized helium. And the joke I have at work, I have 2 kids at home, 12 and 14, I say, I have 2 Helions at home, and I work on Helion. So Helion we have public cloud versions of it, we have enterprise private cloud versions of it, I'll say more about that in a moment. We operate some of the biggest public cloud OpenStack installations in the world, so we've run this at scale. In fact, OpenStack, the organization, builds and tests their distro on our equipment. So it's great to get that infrastructure problem solved, but we still need to climb the ladder, because at the end of the day, what that gets you is either you're ending up with a Windows console or a Linux prompt, and now you're still stuck with that provisioning problem. Remember we talked about that 80%, 20% problem, so we're trying to spend more of our time on our apps, less of the time in the infrastructure. So we can look at this progression. In the old days, whoops, you can see my whole talk in the new days. In the old days, you did everything, and that's what we were talking about. So of course you spend 80% of your time here setting up the ping power pipe, the networking, and whatnot. OpenStack virtualizes the compute, storage, networking pieces, and now you get to spend less of your time there. Others manage that. You manage the provisioning and the frameworks and whatnot. Now what's become the big thing, and we'll talk about a little bit more, is called platform as a service. Now you virtualize the platform. Not only do you virtualize it, others manage it for you. They provide you with a standard set of facilities that give you auto-scaling, that give you monitoring, that give you deployment tools. And what you end up doing is spending even less of your time on all this infrastructure and more of your time on your applications and your data. And hopefully your customer comes along and just eats up this software as a service. Everyone gets rich. We live happily ever after. So this is the progression we're trying to get on to deal with that shift, with that trend. And again, current state, on-premise, OpenStack with something like Helion Development Platform, a platform as a service, and your customer on the other end. So this is the HP strategy. I'll pause here for a few minutes. I know this is a very complex slide, but the notion is that we've taken Cloud Foundry and we've combined it with OpenStack. And so this is Helion OpenStack, this is Helion Development Platform. And this isn't just us, there's a lot of other companies doing this. You can do this on your own as well. But this is a strategy for getting out of that 80-20 trap and deploying apps that are more your code and less worrying about all the other things. Platform as a service has become a big deal. There's lots of good books on it, not the kind that you color eggs with, but the one with the O'Reilly books on it. And it's become a big deal because of what it gives you. So there's a standard there, called Cloud Foundry. And I'll spend a minute or two on the Cloud Foundry conceptual model because I think that's the important thing. The important thing is the ability you have to deploy apps, to manage their health, to control routes to them, to update them, to roll them back, to monitor them and see how they're performing, to scale them across these application execution engines, so you can upscale them, downscale them, and then with a service broker to tie them to either the services out of the box, unmanaged services, or tie them to something like, for those of you who are OpenStack savvy, something like Trove, so a managed, sharded, backed up database provided to you through that system. And all of this you interact from your plug-in tools like Eclipse, or you can go through a browser, you can go through a command line, so you can provision this in a variety of ways. So all of a sudden now monitoring and upscaling and load balancing and routing is all provided for you. So this is really powerful, and hopefully it gets you further. So again, what happened with OpenStack in the infrastructure as a service environment is happening with Platform as a service with Cloud Foundry. So Cloud Foundry started out about a year behind OpenStack, and it's picked up that same momentum. There's a foundation now, so it's driven by a lot of very prominent companies, lots of other companies helping guide the progress of it, and it's become another big deal with a lot of contributions and a lot of contributors. And so again, another technology that you can safely bet on. And so again, a technology that lets you concentrate on applications and data and not on the infrastructure. So again, we have a set of products that help you for that, Helion OpenStack and Helion Development Platform. Now again, this is open source software, so there's community editions. So if you want to try this, you can do so. There are free editions. There are managed service-backed editions as well, services-backed. So if you're an enterprise that needs reliability and that, you can get that. If you're a small startup or someone who's just wanting to test the waters, you can do that. I mentioned this already, so I won't dwell on it much, but again, you can pick up the Helion OpenStack and the development platform. And for proof of concepts and test dev, it's fine. You can do that here in a free edition, and then there's a commercial edition, and there's a link to that. We talked about this already in sort of generic forms, but if you know Cloud Foundry, then you know it's here in the development platform. If you know OpenStack, you know Nova, Neutron, Cinder, Swift, Glance, all of that, that's here. And then we also have developer tools. So we have a developer portal, we have the IDE plugin, we're building a CI/CD pipeline. And so you get all of this, and you have choice. You have the choice of whether you want to use our public cloud. We are in the public cloud business, or a hosted environment where we manage on your behalf, or on-prem private. And again, here's the Eclipse plugin. You can go into the marketplace and download Helion plugin for Eclipse, so you can push the app into that monitored, load-balanced environment with that. So, and again, if you want to just sign up and try it, you can sign up on public cloud and you get a $300 credit, which is good for about 3 months of using that Cloud Foundry environment. We try to give you choice. There's something called a Helion Ready program. So all of these MBAS, I think you're mobile developers, so if you're into the mobile backend as a service, Things like BazBox and Kitizen and Progress Telerik and StrongLoop are all available on the Helion platform. Now you've gotten more time to build your app. What do you do with that? You need to have a structure that is cloud native, that fits with this. In the old days, or recently, a lot of people set up a cloud environment, think, okay, I'm going to virtualize my infrastructure, and then they do what's called lift and shift. And they take their apps and they just move them into the cloud, where the compute is a little bit less reliable, the network's a little bit, and it didn't give them the bang for the buck they wanted. So what you really want to do, if you have the ability to do so, is to architect cloud native apps. You can go to 12factor.net and get a great write-up of some of this, but assuming, you know, node failure, avoid local storage, treat all service connections as transient, these are some of the elements of 12factor.net. Or I was just reading this book on the plane, Building Microservices. You want to structure your app in a microservices architecture if you can do so. I use this at Open Source India, and I think I may have offended some people. What you want to end up with is apps that are cattle, not pets, right? You don't want to name it and love it and care for it and make single points of failure. You want something where there's lots of them, and if one goes away, you don't notice it as much. For this environment, this is probably better paper plates versus fine china. I was in China last week giving this keynote. I had to say fine porcelain there, so you got to be very careful with these things. But whether you're cattle, not pets, or paper plates, fine china, you need to structure your app in a way that you get that reliability from scale, and you get that reliability from redundancy, and you get that reliability from being able to scale small microservices. And also, again, back to that, if you have an urge that someone may have solved this problem, that's probably true. There's services out there like Idle on Demand, which give you a set of those services, microservices, for you to use and to not have to re-implement. So remember FPEG, that face recognition? There's an API for that. You give it a photo, it gives you back the coordinates of where the faces are in the picture. There's sentiment analysis, there's barcode reading, there's optical character recognition. All these things that you don't need to do, that there's services out there that can do for you. And again, this is Idle on Demand, and it's an HP service. If you're working on mobile environments, there's something called link creation technology, technology, which allows you to make a connection. Remember one of my favorite apps, that connection between the physical, the printed page, and the digital. And link technology lets you create a link that a reader on a mobile device can pick up and start playing augmented content on the web. So you supply an image, and it gives you back an embedded link that then your app can read and pick back up. And so you hover the app over the image, and encoded in it is a link to the digital world. So you can increase the value of printed content by using services like this. And one of my favorite stories here is Twigtail. They do books for children, and you supply the images, and they're on difficult parenting topics, like maybe one parent is in the armed forces and is gone, or other things. You can see some of the topics there. And this allows not only for the book to include images of people that the child cares about, but to augment it with content that the child cares about. So kind of a cool example of this. So again, we're in this transition from traditional to cloud native, and a lot of the things you need to do is things that allow you to scale up and scale out, to be virtualized with something like Helion OpenStack, Helion Development Platform, to modify that architecture from those classic three-tier architectures to something more loosely coupled with microservices, and to abstract away as much as you can so that you get to that point where you're worrying about your applications and your data and not about all those layers that someone else can manage on your behalf, or that you can at least do once, set it up, and then use over and over again. And get to that agile point where you're doing continuous integration, continuous deployment, being able to push those apps quickly, to be able to see how they behave at scale, to have the systems in place that let them behave at scale. And I hope that the applications you write going forward, you'll think about, how can I make these cloud native? And you'll try some of these things. Lastly, I'll point out that at our booth there's a tech challenge going on, so come answer some questions, win some great prizes. There's a hackathon going on, great prizes there as well. And again, happy coding and thanks for having me.